Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 777. 777, Friday, May the 10th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, we have two important stories to cover today, one by John Solomon and one by Paul Sperry. That will occupy most of today's video. But before I get to that, just a couple items here, and then we'll get right into that. First, of course, yesterday, recapping what we saw happen, Jerry Nadler was just about to do the markup vote for the obstruction of justice not obstruction of justice against AG William Barr for contempt. They were getting ready to mark up the contempt charge against William Barr. And just before doing so, just minutes before, the White House, of course, invoked executive privilege on the Mueller report, shutting Nadler down. And as a result, he's been having a meltdown. Now, he did a press conference. I'm not sure if he did it that day or if he did it this morning. I saw the video this morning. And basically what we have now is we now have Nadler saying that we now have a constitutional crisis. A constitutional crisis. Now, what's funny about this is that years ago when Obama was president and they finally had no choice over Fast and Furious but to place Eric Holder in contempt, Nadler actually led a group of Democrats who staged a walkout because they filed this against Holder. Same thing against Holder, contempt. So back when Holder was the Attorney General, he staged a walkout. Now he's trying to do contempt, and they had very good reason to have put Holder in contempt of court. He refused for over a year to turn over documents about a serious crime in Fast and Furious. Here, this AG Barr is simply following the law. I mean, if AG Barr did what they wanted him to do, he would be committing a crime, and then they could hold him in contempt and probably get him charged with obstruction. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. But no, Jerry, there is no constitutional crisis in Washington. There's no problem with the Constitution. It's doing fine. There's no problem with Trump. He's doing great. The economy's great. The country's doing fine. The only crisis that we have, Jerry, in Washington is that we have a mental health crisis. A mental health crisis. Jerry and his friends, the demo commies, have some mental problems as a result of the fact that the rotten Reverend Clinton lost, and they could never imagine that happening. And now it looks like they're going to be held accountable for the crimes that were committed during 2016 and the coup effort, which continues into this day, by the way. So, no, we do not have a constitutional crisis. What we have actually is a mental health crisis with the demo commies in Washington and various other places around the country. They need therapy. They need some help. You know, when I look at Nadler, he literally looks like a guy right out of Central Casting from a Mel Brooks movie. In fact, he kind of reminds me of one of the characters in a Mel Brooks movie where he's like a bank teller and he gets robbed and he literally craps his pants. And that's what Nadler kind of reminds me of. He's crapping his pants. He's a crazy man right out of Central Casting. And again, he says there's a constitutional crisis. No, there is a mental health crisis. And it starts with Jerry Nadler and his friends. They need to get some therapy. They need to get some help. And if I were AG Barr, I would actually charge Nadler with obstruction himself, because he is attempting to prevent Barr from carrying out his investigation. He's trying to stop Barr from being able to carry out his investigation. That would be obstruction, and that's what I would charge him with. I'd SWAT rate him. Next, we have the former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, the dishonorable James Comey, on MSNBC yesterday. We talked about that, and he said, and it's just the tone of voice and his whole like body language and everything, where he looks at the other three when he's asked about, William Barr says that the FBI spied on the Trump campaign. What do you have to say about that, Director Comey? And he does that sort of squints his eyes and he looks at him and he goes, the FBI does not spy. The FBI investigates. Oh, really? They don't spy, they investigate. Well, here's what we're going to do, Jim. I'm going to open up my dictionary turn to the page where I'll find the definition of investigate, and we're going to go through the definition of investigate, shall we? Let's see. Investigate, verb, and these are in alphabetical order. Check into thoroughly, be all ears, bug, case, check out, check over, check up, consider, delve, dig, examine, explore, eyeball, feel out, frisk, give the once over, go into, inquire, inquisit, inspect, interrogate, listen in, look into, look over, look see, make inquiry, muck rake, nose around, poke, probe, prospect, pry, put to the test, question, read, reconnoitre, research, review, run down, scout, scrutinize, search, sift, spy. Say that again. Spy. Stake out, study, tap, wire tap. Well, it appears that Comey is wrong again. According to the dictionary, when he says we don't spy, we investigate, it appears that investigating is spying and wiretapping and a lot of other things, according to the book. Now, we keep hearing this term spy and agent provocateur. No one's using the word agent provocateur but me. Remember that. I've not heard anyone else use the term agent provocateur but me. I've been using this term for, almost a year now. Why do I use the word agent provocateur? What does it mean? Well, provocateur means to provoke. To provoke. Provocateur. Agent provocateur. So we have spies and we have agent provocateurs. And we have both being used against the Trump campaign. A spy is someone who's trying to extract or gain information, usually without someone knowing about it. An agent provocateur is someone who actually plants information. So an agent provocateur plants the information and the spy retrieves it. This is what was done to Papadopoulos. This is what was done to Michael Flynn. This is what was done pretty much to Carter Page. And they probably tried to do it to others. Well, yeah, Stone and Caputo also had a run-in with an agent provocateur. And it was probably a spy waiting once the agent provocateur did his part. So I think hopefully, in not the too distant future, we will actually begin using the correct terminology for what the individuals were who were placed in the campaign. And if you remember, the term used by the FBI, the official term was used by Peters Van Strokenus, was Oconus lures. What is a lure? A lure is something used to lure you, to entrap you, essentially. They were sending agent provocateurs in to set traps. And the spies were going to come in afterwards and get that information out. The agent provocateur plants the information, the spy comes and extracts it. That's what was happening. Spies and agent provocateurs used by the FBI. Mr. Comey, read the dictionary. Now, let's move on to the two big stories of the day from John Solomon and Paul Sperry. Let's start with the John Solomon story, and this is a follow-up. Remember, we were talking that there were notes from Kathleen Kvelic about her meeting with Christopher Steele, which she followed up the meeting by sending a letter or an email to various people in several different government agencies to advise them of what she gathered from her interview with Christopher Steele. And that's what this story is about, some of the things in her notes. So, John Solomon, The Hill. The title of this story is FBI's Steele Story Falls Apart. False intel and media contacts were flagged before FISA. So, let's go through this. Notes from Kathleen Kvelic show that her observations of her meeting with Chrissy Steele on 11 October 2016 were recorded 10 days before the FBI used Steele and his infamous dossier to get the FISA on Carter Page. The FBI swore under oath to the FISA court on October 21st, 2016, that Steele's reporting had been corroborated and used in criminal proceedings, and that the FBI had determined him to be reliable and was unaware of any derogatory information pertaining to the informant, Christopher Steele, who was simultaneously working for Confusion GPS, the firm paid for by the Right Reverend Clinton and the Democratic National Committee to fund the Russian dirt on Trump. So here we have Solomon telling us what we've known for a very long time, which was that when they submitted this application to the FISA court, they absolutely did not give the FISA court any reason at all to believe that there was any question of Christopher Steele or his information. There was no question whatsoever about it. They had no reason to believe that anything he was saying was false. In fact, they had every reason to believe that he was a great witness and that his information was awesome. So here we learn that the FBI had told the FISA court that they had determined Christopher Steele to be reliable and that they were unaware of any derogatory information pertaining to the informant, which means they lied. And we, of course, know they lied many, many times, but here we know for an absolute 100% fact sure that they did lie. So let's keep in mind one other thing, too. We keep hearing this phrase, dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, or DNC and Hillary Clinton. Let's go back. After Clinton was forced to come out and admit that she was the one who paid for the dossier, which was about a year after we learned about it, and about a year after everyone's thought, well, obviously it was a Clinton campaign because that's who would be interested in opposition research, but she denied it for a full year. But finally, after she could no longer deny it, when the facts came out and it was proven that she was the one who paid for the dossier, then everybody went to Donna Brazile and Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz to find out what they knew about the dossier and Christopher Steele and Confusion GPS. And Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz and Donna Brazile said, hey, I know nothing about Christopher Steele, a dossier, or Confusion GPS. I had nothing to do with that. And they both say that, of course, Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz was fired because she got caught being in the part of the plot to cheat Bernie. So then Donna Brazile stepped in. But both of them, when asked, said they knew nothing about Confusion GPS, nothing about the dossier, nothing about Steele, nothing about any of it. They knew nothing. And they both say that when the Rotten Reverend Clinton won the nomination, she essentially took over everything. Donna Brazile said she found herself down there at the DNC as the head of the DNC, acting head of the DNC after Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz was forced to resign. She said that she was not able to make any decisions or do anything, especially all decisions, money decisions, were made by the Clinton campaign in New York. Everything that was given to her had to be forwarded immediately to New York, where all decisions were made, especially on money. Brazile and Schultz both say they knew nothing about the dossier, Steele, or Fusion GPS. Now, they may be lying, but at this point, that's their story. So when we're talking about who really funded the dossier, Hillary Clinton was the DNC after she won the nomination in 2016. Now, let's get back to the story here. So, Kevlek, after just one meeting with Christopher Steele, noted in her summary of her meeting with Steele that Steele had told her that the Russians had constructed a technical human operation run out of Moscow targeting the election that recruited immigrants, that would be defectors, in the U.S. to do hacking and recruiting. Kevlek quotes Steele as saying, quote, payments to those recruited are made out of the Russian consulate in Miami. Of course, then Kevlek noted right there that there is no Russian consulate in Miami. No Russian consulate in Miami. Kevlek sent this information to other government officials 8 days before the FISA was issued. Kevlek's memo makes clear that Steele was political, inaccurate, and spinning wild conspiracy theories, and that he was talking to the media. All of these concerns would have weighed against Steele's credibility and should have been disclosed to the judges should have been disclosed to the FISA judges so that they could understand more about the source of this information. But that was all kept from them. Kevlek also made clear in her notes that Steele was in communication with the New York Times and the Washington Post. Kvalik's notes also stated that Steele was managing four FOUR priorities. Client needs, FBI, Washington Post, and New York Times. And he was wanting source protection. So he was wanting source protection on behalf of his clients' needs. That would be Hillary Clinton, the FBI, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. Kvalik's notes also suggest that Steele spun some wild theories to the State Department, including one that Russians had a plant in the DNC and had assembled a Hillary Clinton dossier. Well, I don't know if you consider Seth Rich a Russian plant, and he didn't do a dossier, he just took those emails. Now, that's essentially saying that the Russians had planted an agent inside the DNC. I don't know if Seth Rich was an agent of the Russians, but I think he certainly was involved in the leaking of those documents. There are other claims made by Steele to Kvalik that should have easily been debunked. And of course, we find them in the dossier. And those would be Trump lawyer Michael Cohen traveled to Prague to meet with the Russians. Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort owed the Russians $100 million and was the go-between from Putin to Trump. Trump advisor Carter Page met with a senior Russian businessman tied to Putin. The Russians secretly communicated with Trump through a computer system. All these things are debunked, could have easily been debunked. The Mueller report, of course, debunks all these allegations without actually saying so, and then actually goes on to use the dossier as the primary roadmap for his investigation. I mean, it's like living in crazy world. Despite all of this, and this is all the things that Kvalik put in her memo to the government officials she sent this to. They had it all. They knew all this. So despite all of this, the FBI submitted the FISA application on page to the FISA court marked verified application. Another big fat lie. And of course, Kvalik made it clear that Steele was keen to get his dossier information out before Election Day. Steele had a political, not an intelligence deadline. Let's not forget that Bruce Orr also told the FBI that Steele was desperate to get Trump defeated in the election and that he considered Steele's information to be raw and untested. That's right. Bruce Orr said, hey man, this guy, you know, he hates Trump. He's definitely got a political agenda, and his information, I'm not so sure. It sounds kind of shady, really can't be verified. If I was you, I'd be careful with this guy. That's exactly what Orr told Strzok and McCabe. So Kvalik and Orr figured out Steele's bias and questionable assertions very easily. But the FBI couldn't figure it out. Kvalik figured it out in one meeting. And the FBI couldn't figure it out in what? Months? And then for Mueller, years? And they're still trying to prove the dossier, believe it or not. So, what needs to happen now is that the entire Kvalik memo and all our notes need to be made public and released. They need to be part of the declassification, and I certainly hope that AG Barr is reading that now. Terribly damning evidence. Terribly damning. Definitely proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the FBI had multiple people within the State Department and the Department of Justice, high-level people, certainly Bruce Orr, number 4 man, and Kvalik, certainly in the State Department, I wouldn't say she's high level, but she's high enough level that she's got access to some high-level people. They're telling them, hey man, this guy's, not exactly, this guy's not exactly straight up. You might want to check this guy out. Just threw my notes all over the floor, so now we got real problems. So yeah, I mean, we got Orr and we got Kvalik, both telling the FBI, yet they go to the FISA court and say they have no idea of anything that is going on that's particularly a problem, and that he's straight up, he's a straight shooter, his evidence is good, it's been verified, it's all good. And they get the FISA warrant. Then they get 3 more renewals. And I'll talk about that on another day, the process that you have to go through to get the renewals. So Let me find out where I'm at now. Okay, here it is. Let's see. Okay. 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 Okay, now we're back in order. Now we're good. Okay, let's move on to the next thing on the agenda. That's going to be the Paul Sperry article. Okay, so Paul Sperry has got an article that you definitely want to read in Real Clear Investigations, and we don't have much time, so let's go ahead and get right into that. So Paul Sperry writes that Uncle Bob the Executioner spent $732,000 on private contractors during his witch hunt, but his office is refusing to reveal the names of the contractors. Congressional investigators and government watchdog groups believe that Steele and Fusion GPS are two of the contractors that Mueller may have used. Mueller's team did interview Christopher Steele for 2 days in London shortly after beginning their witch hunt. Mueller uses the dossier information in his report without mentioning the sources of the information or without even mentioning the word dossier. Mueller also cites news articles from Yahoo News, and Yahoo's sources were who? Christopher Steele and Confusion GPS. Mueller even references the PP-Gate story despite no evidence that it is true. The same dossier information that Comey told Congress was salacious and unverified is exactly what Mueller used in his investigation. The Mueller report says that Carter Page knowingly met with Russian intel officials, but federal court records make it perfectly clear that Page did not know that the men that he met with were Russian agents. And I'm not so sure that they were Russian agents. I mean, he said Misfit was a Russian agent as well, did he not? He's certainly wrong about that. I'm sure we're going to find that out too. Uncle Bob the Executioner worked with Steele and used the dossier as his roadmap and central theory in his collusion case. Keep in mind, Steele was being paid by both the rotten Reverend Clinton and the FBI. That makes it even worse. Mueller's office is refusing to disclose the names of the contractors they used or how much they were paid. Sources from the Hill are saying that Mueller deputized Fusion GPS and Steele as part of the Mueller witch hunt, and that $310,000 were paid to outside contractors in just the first 6 months of his investigation. The Mueller report, of course, lies about the Trump Jr. contacts with WikiLeaks. It's already been clearly established. We've been through this God knows how many times. This has been put to bed a long time ago, even before Mueller started his investigation, that Trump Jr. did not reach out to WikiLeaks. After WikiLeaks information was released with the DNC emails, Trump Jr. was sent an email stating that the WikiLeaks release had happened with a link to the WikiLeaks page. It was after they were released, he was sent a link to the WikiLeaks page where you could see the information. There was no effort by Trump Jr., nor did he know prior to the release that they were going to be released. Yet, Mueller tries to make a point in his report that Trump Jr. knew in advance about the WikiLeaks releases. He did not. He did not, and it's proven he did not. He was sent a link to the WikiLeaks page after the release. This has been proven over and over again, yet Mueller goes right there in his report and lies and says that, well, Trump Jr. knew that the WikiLeaks were coming down or coming out or whatever. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I cannot believe that Mueller needs to be SWAT rated. He needs the Roger Stone treatment right now, along with Weissman. They should both get the Roger Stone treatment tomorrow morning. Just like Roger Stone, they should SWAT raid both of them. And then they should get the Manafort treatment in solitary confinement. Because Mueller was paid a hell of a lot of money and given all this latitude to find out what happened. And what did he do? His entire report was nothing but a lie. He never interviewed Veselnitskaya, never interviewed Halper, never interviewed Downer, lied about Misfit being a Russian agent, lies about just about everything in his entire report. The Mueller witch hunt was nothing more than a continuation of the coup plot. And when this is all said and done, he certainly better, along with his Hillary donor posse, better find themselves indicted right along with everybody else for being part of a coup to take down the president. And I don't know at what point William Barr, whether he knows this now or at some point whether he's going to learn this, but he says that he is going to look into the Mueller investigation, look into how that was done and all that sort of thing. He certainly needs to, and he better. And when he does, he's going to come to whether he likes it or not, he's going to come to the same conclusion I reached a long time ago, right along with many of you, that the only thing that happened when Mueller was appointed was they simply passed the baton to him. And his primary job was to protect the incriminated evidence that would prove what was actually done during the 2016 election. That was his number one job. Prevent the evidence that would incriminate them from coming out by blocking it, and then, of course, to do his very best to try to tie Trump and anyone around him to some sort of a crime, or provide enough fodder for Democrats to move on impeachment. And that's primarily what he was brought in to do. I think that will become clearly evident after Mueller looks at this thing. It's not easy. It's not hard to see. It's very, very obvious. It's very, very easy. This is not difficult. It's not difficult. Andrew Weissman briefed reporters in April of 2017 on the investigation and weighed heavily on the Steele information. So we have Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, saying that he believes that Mueller used Steele, Fusion, Nellie Orr, and Edward Baumgartner in his investigation. He also says Glenn Simpson was feeding Democratic leaders in the House and Senate in 2016 and even into 2017. He says that Fusion GPS is still paying Steele and Daniel Jones using funding from Soros-related organizations, and that they are still investigating and still trying to verify the dossier. Oh, man. It's just unbelievable, man. Stuff's really, really hard to believe we're actually living through this. It's like some sort of parallel reality, But, I certainly do hope that Barr is a serious man, and every indication I can see at this point is that he is, and he is going to get to the bottom of it. Trump has certainly got to declassify. I don't know why he's waiting. I do know why. They're saying that, they want to wait for the IG Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz report to come out. Supposedly, once Horowitz's report comes out, that gives Barr what he needs to appoint a special counsel or a group of attorneys, U.S. attorneys, and they'll do all their thing, at which point Trump's going to declassify. He says everything or a lot of things, so we'll find out exactly what happens here. But something needs to happen, and it needs to happen very, very soon, because a lot of people are running out of patience, and I would be one of them. Put me at the top of the list. My patience is running very, very thin at this point. Now, I keep telling people that the Rotten Reverend Clinton is going to throw her hat in the ring unless some extraordinary thing comes along and prevents her from doing so. And so a lot of people don't really believe that. But I believe the Rotten Reverend Clinton is sitting back and watching Biden. I know that she's got her goon squad digging up material on him. I'm sure that they'll have a dossier on Biden, and sometime, I believe, in the late summer, probably somewhere around August, probably no later in the middle of September, they're going to drop everything they got on Biden and destroy him, at which point there'll be no time to bring in another candidate. And there really isn't another candidate in the Democratic field right now that's even remotely electable. The next man up would be Bernie, and it's not going to be Bernie. They're not going to allow Bernie to have the nomination. It certainly isn't going to be Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or any of these other clowns. They're just not even close. The Democrats will be destroyed. The only person left after the Rotten Reverend Clinton takes out Biden will be her. Now, what is frightening the Rotten Reverend Clinton, and the reason she doesn't take Crazy Joe out right now, is because she knows that the Democratic National Committee, the Democratic Party, really doesn't want her. And so they probably, if Biden were taken out, they would most likely turn to Michelle Obama and see if she would be interested in just carrying the torch, at least way so they could make a reasonable, good showing and not get totally blown out and lose 40 states. And I think that the Rotten Reverend Clinton knows this, and I think that that's why she's going to hold off on taking Biden out until the last minute. She'll do it at a point where it'll be too late to turn to someone like Michelle Obama. She won't have time to put anything together. Whereas the Rotten Reverend Clinton will have already had everything pulled together. She'll be ready to go. When she takes out Biden, her organization will be up and running. She's been raising money, and she will have been to all the places you need to go when you're campaigning. You normally go to all the places, New Hampshire, Iowa, and all these places. Well, guess where the Right Reverend Clinton was yesterday? She was in New Hampshire, the first primary state, where she was giving a talk. And in that talk, she actually said that the U.S. elections are being determined by Putin and Kremlin intelligence services. She's delusional, man. She is absolutely delusional. And she will literally run on this. This will be what she'll run on. She will run on the fact that, hey, I won last time, but I was cheated by Putin and the Russians working with Trump. So now you got to correct the problem that was made in 2016, and you got to give me the presidency in 2020 because I got screwed in 2016 by Putin and Trump and the Russians. That's exactly her campaign for 2020 after she takes out Crazy Joe and leaves Michelle Obama on the sideline with no time to move. So this is exactly what I see happening. Just as I've been saying to Reverend Clinton, she's going to be in all these early primary states. She's going to be there giving speeches, doing town halls, keeping her name in the news, continuing to raise money, continuing with her organization. She's just waiting to execute her strategy to get herself as the last option, the only option. She's going to give the Democratic Party in the country the option, the Democrats in this country, the option of me or Bernie. Take your pick. Bernie gets blown out and loses 40 states. I at least always have a chance to win. That's exactly what the Reverend Clinton's going to try to do if other events don't make it impossible for her to do so, such as her health or she's indicted or something like that. Now, what's also funny is that, I forgot to mention this, in the evening with the Clintons that she did back last weekend, she was asked a question about the other candidates in the field. And keep in mind, she's not endorsed anybody. She has not endorsed anybody. So the other candidates out in the field, they're asking her about the other candidates. And she actually said this about the other candidates. And she prefaced it with a classic Hillary Clinton lie. One of those little lies that Hillary Clinton loves to say. And she prefaces, the way Hillary Clinton likes to lie, is she'll preface some truth with some line of bullshit. She wraps a little bit of truth in a big fat lie. All of her truths are wrapped in lies. So what she says is, she says, oh, well, when Democratic candidates come to me for advice, I tell them, yeah, like Democratic candidates are coming to the Right Reverend Clinton for advice. What kind of advice could you give me, Hillary? Well, what you have to do is hire Fusion GPS to put together a dossier, and you have to pump it into the FBI and the intelligence community and create a coup plot against the president. That's the only way you're going to beat him, because he's got a great economy. He's doing good on foreign policy. People love his trade, the way he's doing with China, being tough on trade. Yeah, so you're going to have to cheat him. That's the only way you're going to win. Of course, it didn't work for me, but it may work for you. Of course, don't campaign in Wisconsin, Michigan, and New Hampshire. Don't campaign in any of these places. You might win. So yeah, it's like people coming to Rotten Reverend. I mean, these candidates in the Democratic field, they're staying as far away from the Clintons as they possibly can. I can assure you, there aren't people coming to Hillary going, Hillary, can you give me some good advice on how I could win in 2020? I don't think so. Nobody's coming to Hillary for advice. People are running away from the Clintons. Oh, she's a crazy woman. And like I said at the beginning of this video, we have a mental health crisis. And no one is suffering more from mental health issues than the rotten Reverend Clinton. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See ya. Bye.